Welcome to Creepy, the best horror storyteller on YouTube.
Emily was a young woman who had always loved the outdoors. She had grown up in a small town, but she had always dreamed of living in the woods. When she was old enough, she bought a small cabin in a remote area of the forest. She loved the peace and quiet, and she enjoyed spending her time hiking, fishing, and reading. One winter night, Emily was sitting in her cabin, reading a book by the fire. The snow was falling heavily outside, and the wind was howling through the trees. Emily was cozy and warm inside her cabin, but she felt a sense of unease. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Suddenly, Emily heard a noise outside her cabin. It was a strange noise, like something was scratching at the door. Emily froze, her heart pounding. She sat there for a long time, listening, but she didn't hear anything else. She started to think that she had imagined it. Emily got up and walked to the door. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly opened it. A blast of cold air hit her in the face, and she shivered. She looked outside, but she couldn't see anything in the darkness. The snow was falling so heavily that it was hard to see more than a few feet in front of her. Emily stood there for a moment, listening. She didn't hear anything, so she closed the door and went back inside. She tried to convince herself that it was nothing, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Emily went back to her chair and tried to finish her book, but she couldn't concentrate. She kept thinking about the noise she had heard outside. She tried to tell herself that it was just the wind or an animal, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it was something more. Emily finally decided to go to bed. She figured that if she got a good night's sleep, she would feel better in the morning. But Emily couldn't sleep. She kept hearing strange noises outside her cabin. She heard footsteps crunching in the snow, and she heard branches snapping. She even thought she saw shadows moving in the darkness outside her window. Emily became increasingly terrified. She pulled the covers up over her head and tried to block out the noises, but it was no use. She could hear them all too clearly. She felt like she was being hunted. Emily finally got out of bed and locked herself in her bedroom. She huddled in a corner, shaking with fear. She could hear something outside her door, trying to get in. It was scraping at the door and trying to turn the doorknob. Emily was terrified. She didn't know what to do. She was all alone in the woods, and there was no one to help her. She thought about calling the police, but she knew that it would take them hours to get to her. She was on her own. Emily sat in the corner of her bedroom, listening to the thing outside her door. She was so scared that she could barely breathe. She didn't know what to do. She was trapped. Emily sat in the corner of her bedroom, listening to the thing outside her door. She was so scared that she could barely breathe. She didn't know what to do. She was trapped. The thing outside her door kept trying to get in. It was scraping at the door and trying to turn the doorknob. Emily could hear it breathing heavily. It was getting closer. Emily knew that she had to do something. She couldn't just sit there and wait to be attacked. She had to find a way to escape. Emily looked around her bedroom. She saw a window on the far side of the room. She decided to try to climb out the window and run. She knew that it was a risky plan, but it was her only chance. Emily slowly crept across the room to the window. She was trying to be as quiet as possible, but the thing outside her door must have heard her. It started scraping at the door even harder. Emily reached the window and fumbled with the latch. She finally managed to open it, and she pushed it up as far as it would go. She stepped out onto the windowsill and took a deep breath. The snow was falling heavily outside, and the wind was howling. Emily knew that she had to be quick. She didn't want to freeze to death. Emily lowered herself down the side of the cabin. She was careful not to make a sound. She finally reached the ground, and she ran as fast as she could into the woods. Emily didn't know where she was going. She just wanted to get away from the cabin and the thing that was inside. She ran through the snow, her lungs burning. She could hear the thing behind her, chasing her. Emily stumbled and fell, injuring herself. She tried to get up, but she couldn't. She was lying on the ground, gasping for breath. The thing caught up to her. It stood over her, its shadow looming over her. Emily could feel its hot breath on her face. She closed her eyes and waited for the end. But the end never came. Emily opened her eyes and saw a figure standing between her and the thing. The figure was tall and muscular, and it was wearing a heavy coat and a fur hat. The figure raised its hand, and the thing retreated into the darkness. The figure turned to Emily and knelt down beside her. "Are you all right?" it asked. Emily nodded. "Yes," she said. "Thank you." The figure helped Emily to her feet. "Come on," it said. "We need to get you out of here." The figure led Emily through the woods. They walked for a long time until they finally reached a small cabin. The figure opened the door and led Emily inside. The cabin was warm and cozy. There was a fire burning in the fireplace, and there was a pot of coffee brewing on the stove. "Sit down," the figure said. "You can rest here for a while." Emily sat down in a chair by the fire. The figure poured her a cup of coffee. Emily took a sip and closed her eyes. She was so exhausted. "Who are you?" Emily asked. "And why did you save me?" The figure smiled. "My name is unimportant," it said. "But I'm here to help you." Emily looked at the figure. She could tell that it was telling the truth. She felt safe for the first time in a long time. "Thank you," she said. "I don't know what I would have done without you." The figure smiled again. "You're welcome," it said. "Now, get some rest. You'll need it." Emily nodded and closed her eyes. She drifted off to sleep, feeling safe and protected. When Emily woke up the next morning, the figure was gone. She got up and looked around the cabin. It was empty. Emily went outside and looked around. She couldn't see the thing anywhere. It was as if it had vanished into thin air. Emily didn't know what to make of it. She didn't know who the figure was or why it had saved her. But she was grateful. Emily knew that she could never go back to her cabin. She knew that the thing was still out there, somewhere. But she also knew that she wasn't alone. The figure had promised to help her. Emily took a deep breath and started walking. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew that she would be okay. Emily walked for hours, following a narrow path through the woods. She didn't know where she was going, but she didn't care. She just wanted to get away from the cabin and the thing that was inside. Emily was tired and hungry, but she didn't stop walking. She knew that if she stopped, the thing would catch up to her. Finally, Emily came to a clearing in the woods. In the middle of the clearing was a small cabin. Emily ran to the cabin and knocked on the door. A few moments later, the door opened. A woman stood there, looking at Emily with surprise. "Can I help you?" the woman asked. Emily nodded. "I'm lost," she said. "And I'm scared." The woman opened the door wider and invited Emily inside. "Come in," she said. "You'll be safe here." Emily followed the woman into the cabin. The cabin was small but cozy. There was a fire burning in the fireplace, and there was a pot of soup simmering on the stove. The woman sat Emily down at the table and gave her a bowl of soup. Emily ate the soup hungrily. She was so hungry that she didn't even notice how good it tasted. Now, the woman said, "Tell me what happened." Emily told the woman about the thing that had attacked her at her cabin. She told her about the figure that had saved her, and she told her about how she had been walking through the woods for hours. The woman listened patiently to Emily's story. When Emily was finished, the woman nodded. "I know what you're dealing with," she said. "The thing that attacked you is called a Wendigo. It's a creature of myth and legend, but it's also very real." Emily shivered. "What is it?" she asked. "It's a spirit that possesses people," the woman said. "It makes them evil and bloodthirsty." Emily swallowed hard. "Is there a way to stop it?" she asked. The woman shook her head. "Not that I know of," she said. "But there is one thing you can do." "What's that?" Emily asked. "You have to run," the woman said. "You have to get as far away from the Wendigo as possible." Emily nodded. "I know," she said. "But I don't know where to go." The woman smiled. "I can help you with that," she said. The woman gave Emily a map and a compass. She showed Emily how to use them, and she told her how to get to a nearby town. "Thank you," Emily said. "I don't know what I would have done without you." The woman smiled. "You're welcome," she said. "Now, go. Be safe." Emily hugged the woman goodbye and left the cabin. She looked at the map and compass in her hands, and she took a deep breath. She knew that she had a long journey ahead of her, but she was determined to survive. Emily started walking. She followed the map and compass, and she walked for days. She slept in the woods at night, and she ate whatever she could find. Finally, Emily reached the town. She was exhausted and dirty, but she was also alive. She had escaped from the Wendigo. Emily went to the sheriff's office and told him her story. The sheriff was skeptical at first, but he eventually agreed to send a search party to the cabin in the woods. The search party found the cabin, but they didn't find anything else. The Wendigo was gone. Emily never went back to the woods. She knew that the Wendigo was still out there, somewhere. But she also knew that she would be okay. She had survived the Wendigo once, and she could do it again. Emily eventually moved to a big city, where she started a new life. She never forgot the Wendigo, but she learned to live with the fear. She knew that it was always out there, somewhere, but she also knew that she was stronger than it was.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more similar horror stories.